Welcome to UC Today with me, David Dungay. I have with me Scott Goodwin, SVP of International Development of NetSapiens. Hi Scott, that was a bit of a mouthful. But hi, welcome to the show. How are you today?
I'm well, thank you, David.
Excellent. Well, today, Scott, we're going to be talking about disintermediation in the channel. But before we get into that, do you want to give our audience a bit of an overview of yourself and the business?
Sure, yeah, no problems. So, Scott Goodwin, I'd say I wear a couple of hats in the organisation. One is to look after the international strategy of the business, shape our ambitions outside of North America, where we're extremely well known, and I also hold the operational hats of running their EMEA capabilities as well. So,
excellent. So, disintermediation, we're going to be talking about this today. There's a big emergence of some pretty significant brands in the channel, and we're going to be discussing what this means. But before we get into all of that, do you want to give us your sort of overview? What is disintermediation for those who might not be familiar with it?
Yeah, big word. It essentially just means the squeezing out of. I would say is the best way to describe it. The removal of, and in the channel world, it really calls to large brands effectively stepping over the service providers, which was always the primary go-to-market offer, extending their brand to end users, and then starting to have direct relationships. And that's where the word has the right context in this discussion.
Okay, well, I'm gonna press you on some of these points, Scott, today. Disintermediation, I'm going to get that right, in the channel. Is there not an argument that this has been happening for an awful long time? We see the likes of, well, particularly now, Microsoft with their Microsoft Teams offering. We see it with other big brands like Avaya and Mitel. There's always been that exposure to those big super brands, if you like. Is this just the same thing, or is there something new going on here?
I think it's an acceleration of it for sure, and this isn't just something that you find yourself in the technology world that's dealing with large brands, be they car manufacturers, or whatever, are starting to take direct ownership of end users, where they had previously used intermediaries in order to be able to manage relationships, take customer feedback, work with them to develop products and services that fit that local understanding and market understanding and knowledge. Is that this has been going on for a while. So yeah, to echo your point, it's not new. I think it has a lot to do with the speed at which it's happening now. Customer ownership is an incredibly sensitive thing, particularly in our industry, which is the technology industry. The more that the vendor, the underlying operator, gets access to the end user customer data, the more strong and powerful their relationship is. And it enables them to be able to make good product decisions in the way that they want to develop the products, but also in how they then ultimately communicate to the customer. And then really the challenging part of this is, if you're an end user, who do you believe your relationship is with? As vendors start to extend their reach to the end user becomes unclear about who their relationship is with, and that's the dangerous thing, or the thing that is front of mind for most service providers today, is are they losing control of that relationship to the vendor that they've introduced to the customer.
So, I mean, how much of this is inevitable, shall we say, or not control, not in control of, by the channel, demand driven by end users for these big brands? Is that surely that's going to continue?
It certainly feels inevitable, I think, to many service providers, and I think the real question here is, what is the role of the service provider moving forward? So, and how does that effectively, how is that a different experience for end users vis-a-vis dealing with a large technology brand? So, the historical role of the service provider is one that provides, a local presence with the actual customer themselves. They actually get to meet, staff from the service provider. That service provider spends a lot of time understanding that customer's needs and what they need to, in order to be able to improve their business. They act as a smart translator for how this new technology can benefit their organization. They ease them through various different change programs. That is the role that service provider has traditionally played, and as opposed to, I guess, the vendors approach of it, or the large kind of IT brands, if you like, that are extremely smart people that develop good services, but it's a very much an online experience. It's a one size tends to fit all a kind of approach to it. If you're an end user, you're usually talking to that brand via some form of AI or chat bot. It isn't as personal as it once was. And you get aggregated, effectively, feedback from customers, where traditionally the service provider was the one that worked with the vendors to be able to describe to the vendors the changes that they needed to make to adopt to their customers' best need. And I think the jury's out on which one is the right approach. And it's certainly service providers are going to have to change the way that they work, in terms of how they will deal with this new relationship.
Well, I mean, Scott, maybe you can tell us about some of the partners working with yourself. And there's always two sides to these stories, and the channel, I'd argue, has been dealing with this dynamic for a long time. Maybe not on this scale, but why are partners coming to work with NetSapiens? How are you combating this?
A couple of different ways, really. I think we see our primary role is supporting the service provider. If we can do that well, then the service provider can support the end user. So there's three pillars, I guess, in the way that we would do that. So we've always been around, as I say, that the service provider is the brand that reaches the end user. Service providers are seeking to try and protect those revenues on those relationships as much as they possibly can. The way that they go about that is by utilizing their understanding of their end users and building appropriate solutions that can satisfy those end users' needs. So the question is, how do we then enable the service provider to do that? A couple of different ways is we are, as an organization, extremely open in the way that we interact with a wider ecosystem. So we play extremely well with others. So service providers can attach multiple different types of devices. We're not a Cisco, unless it's a Cisco product that's the end of it. It won't get that full end-to-end experience. What we do is we have a vast array of edge devices that we play extremely well with. We have an open API that allows our service providers to orchestrate over 250 commands across our platform. The combination of those two things are they can put solutions together for end users that are at the right price, the right functionality, and will integrate with whatever back office systems that those people actually have. You start to put those solutions together, you can add real value to the end users, you can deliver value, you can make good margins because you're delivering good value to your end users. So it's not one individual thing, it's a combination of things that we do. And I'd say the proof point of that, David, is that when you look at our growth vis-a-vis our competitors, NetSapiens partners, we're independently audited, and Frost and Sullivan report was showing that we were growing twice as fast as our competitors or peer group that were using a different type of underlying UC service.
Wow!
So it can happen. Service providers can develop great solutions for customers that allow better margins and faster growth than what you would think a brand would provide you.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, so let's talk about brand. How much does brand matter in a channel sense? How much of this is about brand, and how much of this is about simple education of the end customer about where the value that the partners are bringing to the table, and what those differentiations are, and those value adds.
So I think brands from a channel perspective have always been seen as being, it's a best of breed component, if you know what I mean. Is I will promote a large technical brand because maybe a slight insecurity that their own brand doesn't have as much weight to it. I think that is becoming less and less of a selling point, to be honest. I think organizations, enterprises, small to medium businesses, want to have close relationships when they're outsourcing their infrastructure and their IT to people. I think they want to know that this organization that they're working with has got their back, that they are local and accessible, that I'm not having a one size fits all approach given to me. So I think in the past that was possibly the case. I think all of the stuff that we see and the research that we commission is showing itself that the service providers have got a fantastic role to play with end users, and particularly leveraging that local high touch capability and their understanding of that organisation and the building of solutions that add true value.
Yeah. So, I mean, we're seeing, particularly here in the UK, we're seeing the prevalence of the agent or dealer model, if you like, with a lot of these big brands. In the US, of course, they've been used to this sort of agent model for quite some times. What does this all mean for those types of businesses that are merely sales agents? Maybe not providing the gambit of support and services and things around these propositions. What does this mean for those type of partners?
Well, I think they are quite open to brands, aren't they? Because they think the brands are the thing that's opening the door and making the sale a little bit easier, or path of least resistance, I guess, would be the sides for that in the agent model. Is our partners are also building their own brands, and then it's up to them to decide whether they use an agent model, as part of their overall kind of channel strategy. We don't have a NetSapiens brand which agents can tap into. That's not the business that we're in. We're in the business of providing service providers who wish to promote their own capabilities, and then how they sell it is up to them. I think. If you're asking for an observation on the agent model, I think I think agents are a really good way of getting rubber on the road and starting to get effective sales with minimal risk. I think that's the reason why service providers have used that model. I think it's extremely expensive, actually, when you look at the percentage of the revenue shares that you have. So it's not as cheap as what you would think. You lose some of the control in the sale in such a process as well. You're outsourcing your brand to somebody else to sell on your behalf. You then take control of it in terms of service delivery and support thereafter. I think from the agent's side, their risk is always how long, these in perpetuity deals, are they really in perpetuity? They're all subject to lots of caveats in them in the event of, there's no guarantee that that revenue share is sustainable and in perpetuity and forever. It is usually also anchored around the initial sale rather than the lifetime or the lifetime of whatever downstream opportunities there are for secondary products and services. So it has its benefits for some. It's not something particularly that's I'm that familiar with, mainly because of the relationships that we hold with service providers and not agents.
Sure. Okay. Well, look, let's put ourselves in the partner's shoes today. We're in middle of 2021. The landscape has changed quite a lot in the last 18 months, for obvious reasons. In terms of these partners choosing the service providers that they work with. I mean, what would you say? We've spoken about some of them already, but what would you say are the main considerations? What should they be thinking about before they make that leap into working with their service provider partners?
Yeah, very good question. I think for me personally, it's what are you seeking to achieve as an organization? So if you're seeking to achieve high valuation, really, then you got to own the customer. If you can prove that you own the customer truly, in that they're buying your capability, you're billing for all of the services directly, you're collecting those, you've got the ability to create unique product sets or service packs as well, that you've got multiple hooks into the customer because you're driving multiple different types of revenue streams. Essentially, these are the things that drive you. I mean, at the end of the day, most of the channel organizations, they're entrepreneurially led. They're not in it for the good of their health. They're in it for value creation, for some kind of exit strategy at some point, or some kind of regional or global domination position that they have. So value creation is at the core of everything that they do. And I think when you're seeking to maximize your value, you've either got to be able to scale massively quickly and incredibly efficient to be able to do that. And that is one strategy. If you're going to go down that path, then you need huge degrees of automation. You need massively scalable and robust solutions. You need proven technology in order for you to do that. Or if you're looking for the higher margins that are available in the market, and there are definitely higher margins that are available in the market, you've got to understand your customers really, really well. You've got to understand their business processes really well. You've got to be able to create solutions that are driving that change and those efficiencies, because that's the things that customers will pay for to be able to get. And also you've got to build it on, highly scalable, highly robust, highly stable capabilities, so you're not dealing with, customer problems and higher degrees of churn. So, I'd be looking for solutions that allow me to do that as me, as my brand, to be able to capture that. I would want to see a huge depth and breadth of features and functionality. I'd want a demonstrable track record that they have proven to scale time and time and time again. 100,000 endpoints deployments are not enough. You have to show that you can scale in the millions. You've got to be able to have that broad feature set and component. For sure. I think the API access, your ability to play well with others, becomes incredibly important when you're starting to build solutions and put those together to end users. But I think fundamentally, what you've also got to have is control over your financial model. So, and NetSapiens, biggest, benefit that we have is that we do not have our model is that we only have one type of license. You get everything that we've got. So it's very easy for people to understand. And you can break that package up into as many different seats or persona items that you like. But you only consume our licenses in the event that they are being used, which is a massive difference. So, traditionally in our space, vendors would set a price on a per seat basis and by functionality. So essentially, by extension, they're setting the price in the market, because you have to add on your operating margins in order to be able to run a business. If I'm buying at 10 and I need 40 points, I've got to sell it at 14 quid. When you're only paying on a usage basis, you've broken that link completely, and you can be far more flexible in the way that you ultimately want to price it to the market. And less than 5% of seats are in use at any one time across the industry. So you've got enormous, enormous ability of downstream options to price things optimally for you as a service provider.
Sure. Okay. I mean, how many partners do you think are sitting there right now thinking, well, I've got to use the big brands. I've absolutely got to, present those big names to my customers because that's what they're asking me for. What would you say to those partners?
I'd say, have a bit more confidence in yourself. Really, I think, the major brands, the Vodafones of this world, they might be using somebody else's technology, but they don't go and promote somebody else's brand into their customer base because they know the value of customer ownership. So there are large organizations that are out there that kind of lead the way, that it doesn't matter. I'm the service provider. I'm the one that provides you the service, is because they understand the value that's attributed to that. I think, again, the research would show that people are end users, mid-sized enterprises, small to medium businesses, that they value local relationships, and actually technology is becoming relatively commoditized. The platforms that you can use are, highly scalable. It's a highly competitive market. They're all robust. Networks are becoming ever speedier and of higher quality as well. So you can deploy these solutions if you're using the right partner and be very confident that it will go smoothly and your customer support issues will be minimized as you go. And I think, I would encourage them to keep the services and the relationships under their own brand. I would encourage them to be able to take the time to understand their customers and create relevant products and services that are for them. Don't just take what's off the shelf from ABC vendor, add on 25, 35 points and then stick that out of the customers, because there are hundreds of people that are doing that, and it's a race to zero, as we've seen particularly over the last couple of years.
Yeah. So, this topic fascinates me. How's it all going to play out, Scott? Over the next sort of 2 to 5 years, we've seen the growth in the market over the last year or two. How do you see this trend, this disintermediation trend, playing out? Or clearly, your growth signifies there's obviously demand for, partners are coming to this conclusion a little bit themselves as well already. What's your take on the future?
Well, I'm a real believer in competition, to be honest. So I think competition is a really good thing, not just in terms of keeping everybody honest and getting the price right for the end user and all that kind of stuff. I think lack of competition breeds complacency, and it was forever thus. These things are proven. So, what I would like to see is not a dominant, one player takes all, or it gets divided up by two or three brands, because that's proven never to be good for anybody. Ultimately, prices then start to rise, customer service then starts to fall. History's littered with examples like that. I'd like to see a vibrant service provider community that is providing fantastic services through deep understanding of its customers and building solutions that adds value to them. And in the process of doing that is, if under our model, service providers thrive, they don't just survive, they thrive under that model. More competition comes into that space and everybody benefits from it. The big players are kept honest. End users always get a service, they can find what they want. And that's what I would like to see for sure. Now, and again, that's where we're making our investments to try and ensure that independent service providers can thrive in those markets, even though those are battles that are being taken with very large brands with end user ambitions.
Great. Well, look, Scott, I think that's a great place to end today's discussion. Thank you so much for joining me.
No problems, David. Thank you.
And thank you for watching me, David Dungay, on UC Today. If you like today's discussion, please give us a like and a share on social media. That's it from me. I'll see you next time.